All right. Well, while we're waiting for people to join, I can go over a few quick housekeeping items, and I'll also drop these in the chat to refer back to at any point. But let's get things started. So, welcome everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for the Benefits Gender Gap: Elevate Your Total Rewards to Empower Women in Your Workplace. My name is Carly Jose, and I'll be helping out behind the scenes during today's panel discussion. A few quick housekeeping items before we get started. We will have some time for Q&A at the end of the panel discussion. So if you have questions, feel free to enter them into the Q&A feature that you see on your screen throughout the discussion. Also, feel free to connect and introduce yourself in the chat box. We love to know where people are joining from and what excites you about this conversation. If we don't have time to get to your question, I will be sure to share it with the panelists so that they can follow up with you individually. And if you're having any technical issues during the session, please feel free to let me know. You can send me a direct message through the chat feature, and I'll help troubleshoot and get you all set up. So now, without further ado, I'll turn things over to our amazing moderator, Averjill.
Hello, thanks for the introduction, Carly. I'm so glad, but so glad to be here, but let me reiterate some of the things that you said. Please definitely ask anything that you need to in the Q&A box. If we can't get to it during today's discussion, it'll certainly still be gathered and you will be responded to, whether that question is for the panel in totality or any one of the panelists individually. So please ask, ask, ask. And I'm so excited that we've gathered here with this amazing group of benefit equity experts to tackle what is, to me at least, and I'm sure to you, an extremely important topic today. Because we've all seen the statistics, it's out there, it's shocking, it's horrific. We know the numbers, one of which is that over 2 million women have left the workforce since the COVID-19 pandemic has begun. That's a large number. But as employers, you have a really good opportunity to intervene and transform the workplace in a way that is completely impactful and addresses the gaps that led to the mass exodus of the women in the first place, right? Retaining women in the workplace, supporting women as they re-enter the workplace and their careers has now become a priority for employers, as it should. Companies have come to the realization that with the right partners and strategies, they can work to reduce turnover, hire for skill sets that they actually need, and ensure that women's progress in the workplace isn't set back by an entire generation. To support these attraction, retention, and return to work efforts, we've brought together leading employee benefit experts across mental health, maternal health, family benefits, and financial well-being sectors, as well as all of you who did not think it robbery of your time to gather here today with us to discuss how you can passionately enact real change. I'm Averjill Rookwood. I'm the founder of the Corporate Doula. What I do is I help companies elevate what they offer as their family benefits, as well as serve for their employees in a doula capacity. I come from a very long history of employee benefits, and I've seen every aspect of it, from the people that pick up the phone to talk to your employees, down to behind the scenes and setting up the systems that make all of this work. And so this is very intimate work for me. And in that work, I discovered my love for maternal health as well. And that chose to marry the two together to really bring forth a product that I hope will be impactful in the market. But what I would love to do is give the mic to our panelists today to really give us a little idea of who they are and what they bring to the table. And then we'll jump right into our discussion today. Rebecca, can we start with you?
Absolutely. And thank you, Averjill. I told her if she didn't say her full bio, I was definitely going to pump her up. Averjill has worked in the benefit space. She has helped so many companies implement incredibly compelling benefits. And she has really seen every side of this industry. And so it's amazing to have her here today. Thank you so much. I'm Rebecca Liebman. I'm the co-founder and CEO of LearnLux. We are a workplace financial well-being company. And, I started the company about 6 years ago. I had been living in Kenya, working on financial inclusion in Kenya, and was just blown away by how much innovation was happening in Eastern Africa compared to the States around financial inclusion. And came back to the States, started working at a lab at MIT, and learned that 90% of Americans don't have access to a financial planner or a financial plan. They guess and check their whole life. They never know if they're on track. They don't know who to trust. They don't know who to talk to. And it's really hard to talk about money. And so we started LearnLux to provide fiduciary financial guidance to everyone, no matter your income and asset level. And that is exactly what we do today. And we focus specifically on workplace financial well-being, helping companies roll out financial wellness plans.
Thank you. Debbie, how about you?
Sure. Hi. So I'm Debbie Markowitz. I'm the CFO of Spring Health, and Spring Health is a mental health benefit for employers. I've spent the last 20 years in finance for high growth companies. I've had the pleasure of working in financial well-being like Rebecca, and in family and fertility building like Sonia. So it's a true pleasure to be on a panel with these exceptional women. I joined Spring because mental health was something that was deeply personal to me and my family. The stigma of mental health, and I'm just so proud of the progress that we as a nation have made in reducing the stigma, speaking about it more. And we'll get into the current situation with the country, with the globe, and obviously mental health is a top priority these days.
And Sonia?
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me today. It's such a pleasure to be here with all of you. And my name is Sonia Millsom. I'm the Chief Commercial Officer here at Maven. And I joined the company just in late September, actually, relatively new. But Maven, for anybody who doesn't know, is one of the world's largest women and family health virtual care platforms. We support the journey from preconception and fertility all the way through parenting and pregnancy and return to work, and all the way through parenting and pediatrics. And so really thinking comprehensively around that. And my career has been entirely in healthcare. I actually started as a maternal child health Peace Corps volunteer in Africa many years ago, which is really where I was inspired from the passion of thinking about delivery system reform, and particularly around maternal child health. And so it's awesome to be here at Maven and to be able to really think and come full circle in the ability to bring the investments that we believe are core and important at the very start of life when people are becoming parents, and any path to parenthood that may be, but to invest there because those investments have significant impact from a health status perspective, as well as from a financial perspective, and overall equity in our system. And so we're really excited to have this conversation here with all of you today.
Oh, you're on mute, Averjill.
Sorry. Thank you, Sonia. That was a real good bridge to our first question that we want to dig into. And so first of all, we want to thank LearnLux for putting us all together. The three of us are a lot more health centric. And Rebecca, you really dig more into the financial side. And so my first question for the entire panel is really about what are some of the challenges facing women in the workforce in 2021 that your company helps to solve for? And Rebecca, I'd love to throw that to you first to really kind of lead us in there with a financial point of view, because as a former benefits manager, I think that's the forgotten benefit a lot of the times. And our financial health really affects our health in so many other ways.
Absolutely. And I think financial well-being, we talk about every day, mental well-being and family planning, it really does impact everything. And, like many of these topics, finances are really hard to talk about in general. And even before COVID, women were usually left out of the conversation when it comes to money. And COVID has really magnified financial vulnerabilities for people in a way that we have never seen. You talked about 2 million people, over 2 million women leaving the workforce just in the last year. And that really changes how people think about financial security, how they think about retirement, how they think about their ability to make the decisions they want to make. you know, our goal at LearnLux is to make sure that you start the conversation around money. And it's something that a lot of people need a little push to start talking about. And we help you figure out what questions you need to ask and give you the answers. A lot of people don't know what question to start with. You know, make sure you have a plan, make sure you know where you currently stand. I think what's also really interesting is early on, because we really serve mass market, we know that for most Americans, the pillars of people's financial plan are their benefits from their company. Many times it is the retirement program, the healthcare plan, the equity, you know, all the HSA, FSA, DCFSA, those things help with all these things. And if people aren't working, they're not having access to those benefits that help perpetuate so many other decisions in their life. And so I'm really excited to, you know, have this conversation and bring in how all of you help in those areas as well.
I love it. I think another area that really COVID's shown a light on, but was really in the background for far too long, is behavioral health. And so Debbie, I'd like you to talk about what your company does to kind of help solution some of the deficit that women experience today in the workforce.
Sure. So, so we offer what we call precision mental health care by combining a clinically proven technology with high-touch care navigation. And through both of those, we can personalize a mental well-being care plan specific for the individual. And similar to what Rebecca was saying, a lot of times people don't know where to start the conversation. So we start with an assessment, and we help our members and patients know where to begin. The key reason why our founders founded Spring Healthcare was because there's this real issue with trial and error in mental health care. And 70% of people, when they finally admit they need help, they start in the wrong place. And then that just takes too long, frustration, people don't even try anymore, and now they're back to square one. And so the whole mission around Spring was to really help people get to the right care as quickly as possible. And then now, we're a year into COVID, and mental health it is a crisis for everyone. Women are being tasked with not only having full-time jobs, being mothers, being teachers. And so the amount of time that a woman has to actually care about and think about and address her own mental health is greatly diminished. And then in addition to all this, we're also hearing these really sad and scary statistics around teenagers and children and their mental health throughout this journey. So Spring Health does address teenagers and children as well with our solution.
And I think that's an important subset of those who are on employer benefits that sometimes don't get served, is that almost adult, not really an adult, still dependent. So I'm really glad that you said that. In my advisement of my clients, I'm really agnostic to who I recommend and who gets kind of put into the mix. It's super important that the point solution really solves the problem, but more times than not, it's easy to spot a gap in maternity health and family benefits. And so, Sonia, I'd love for you to talk about what Maven brings to the table to help solve some
absolutely. Thank you. We, again, as I mentioned, Maven, really, we think about it on a comprehensive basis, and being able to think about the journey of becoming a parent from preconception through fertility. And that means also surrogacy and adoption, and again, all paths to parenthood on a very inclusive basis, as well as maternity, return to work through postpartum, and then parenting in pediatrics. And thinking about that again on a holistic basis, I mean, we do have a public health crisis around maternal mortality, and that is really the result of just care not being coordinated in appropriate ways. And so really the goal of Maven and our mission is to change the health of the world, one woman, one family at a time, but it's to bring all of those resources to bear and to really allow an individual to create a personalized journey based on what they may need. They may need mental health, as you're talking about, Debbie, as part of that. We saw an increased use of mental health utilization in Maven, 300% because of COVID. Of all of the traditional support systems that we saw through family and even in provider offices, all of those have been eliminated. But we also see women, even pre-pandemic, where 43% of them were dropping out of the workforce, even though they wanted to come back, because they just didn't have the support that they needed in order to make the right choices to come back to work. And so Maven's ability to really, again, bring together all of those resources to bear, whether it's a mental health therapist, a fertility awareness coordinator, a lactation consultant, or a return to work counselor, really helps people throughout their journey. And again, we really want to support women and their families and their partners to be able to help support, again, that journey into parenthood and to be able to work through that as well.
Love that. Next, I want to talk about equity, right? Because it is really the key word that's hidden behind some of the gaps that women experience in the workplace. But when it comes to equity, it's important to talk about the cross-sectionality of it, right? So yes, we're talking about women, but there's women who are disabled. There's women who are experience inequity due to race, gender, disability. There's so many things that kind of collide together alongside being a woman. So can you talk about how, Sonia, what you do, your company does, assesses and tackles benefit equity amongst the workforce population?
Yeah, absolutely. First, maybe just to start with a little bit of data and context to what you're speaking about. We actually did a research study with Great Places to Work, which was one of the largest studies, 850,000 individuals that we surveyed, both parents and non-parents, to get information about what is it that we're, deeming best places to work. And really what we saw is that employers that were investing in parents as well as non-parents really actually had better outcomes. They saw a 5.5% greater revenue return because of their investments in all of the different types of benefits that helped increase productivity, inclusivity, a variety of things. And so I think the data is really bearing out that these investments are not just just a kind of a nice to have. They're actually generating great business returns in addition to what we need to see in the marketplace. And as part of that, Maven, again, actually 30% of our users are men. And so we believe that partners as well as parents, all kinds of, again, path to parenthood, really need to be able to have access to resources to help support that journey. We support same-sex couples and, again, anybody that is starting that journey into the parenthood. And we also believe that access and equity is accessible through access, right? And so the whole aspect of telehealth and being able to, again, bring on an on-demand basis, 24/7 availability of all of our resources in a very comprehensive way. So people don't actually have to take time out of work or search for a provider that may be far away or have additional co-payments, actually brings many resources to bear in a comprehensive way. And being really inclusive, to your point about things like race as well. We have invested quite a bit in our provider network to ensure that we have a variety of providers that can support on a very races, languages, ethnicity, again, same-sex couples, LGBTQ+, having a ton of awareness and sensitivity around that to help support individuals for their specific needs. So if a Black mother wants a Black lactation consultant at 2 a.m., we want to be able to provide that availability, and we do, which we believe and know will bring better outcomes overall.
Absolutely. Rebecca, can you talk to us about how that works at LearnLux?
Yeah, absolutely. And I love everything you said. There's so many similarities. I think, the thing about financial well-being is that it does impact every single person. It's something that's ubiquitous among everyone, no matter who you are. We typically work with large companies that have incredibly diverse workforces when it comes to, even income diversity, where people are located, geography, generation. People are coming to this conversation with all different backgrounds, all different life stages. And so we need to be really cognizant of that. I mentioned we started the company because 90% of Americans don't have access to a financial planner. And that's because they don't meet the asset minimum that has traditionally been required in the industry. And we thought that that's crazy. We need to create a solution for mass market where everyone can have access. And the reason we have a huge wealth gap in America is because people don't have this access, traditionally have not been able to, make a plan, work with someone, make their money, make money, be on a track. And so, it's really amazing to be at LearnLux, where similarly, people can use the technology product. They can also work with a certified financial planner. And we have to have certified financial planners who, you know, have all different backgrounds, because people want to talk to someone who has a similar situation to them. They want to talk to someone who relates to them, who's been through some of the situations they've had. You know, someone once told me, you don't always want a fitness instructor who has never really had to try that hard. You might want a planner who's had to work to get to a good place, so that they can empathize with you and really work with you and have seen different situations. Just a really jarring fact is there is a study released by a large financial institution that 70% of the eye contact made when a couple meets with a financial advisor, 70% of the eye contact is made at the male. In the industry, most people don't even involve women in the conversation when they're talking about these life decisions. And so again, it's making sure that all these certified financial planners, they're employed at LearnLux because they're specifically, you know, they work very different than in the industry. It's very different conversations. It's people coming to us that might have no plan at all. They might want to retire in 2 years and have no savings. And the conversation isn't, you're not in luck. The conversation is, it's amazing that you're taking the first step, because a lot of people don't do that. It's a very positive conversation, inclusive, and making sure that people can talk to someone that they're comfortable with.
I think that both your points, the technology is great, but it's the access and the availability to these benefits that really are moving mountains to help close that gap. Thank you so much for shedding light on that. If you ask me what's wrong with the way that benefits were done, to me, I would tell you that women weren't taken under consideration when benefits were being put together, kind of last on the list or an appendage at the end. So Debbie, I'd really love to ask you, why are traditional rewards strategies falling short right now when it comes to supporting women in the workplace from your perspective?
Yeah. And I'm going to reiterate so much of what was just said. I'm so glad we're all like tackling, like addressing the same problems. And so, you know, we'll start with access. And I think obviously first providing access is incredibly important. And the next is communicating it. And so many companies do offer some form of mental health benefit, but more than 50% of the employees don't know that it exists. And then more importantly than that, and what really I talked about in the beginning, is the precision of the access that is provided. And so again, you know, we talk about all the strains on women today. So providing the right access at the right time is more critical than ever. And then we also do follow that up with a personal care navigator. And so when somebody goes through their assessment, we are able to diagnose them along a spectrum of acuity as well as different diagnoses. And also stepping back, women have different mental health issues than men do. Women are more than twice as likely to suffer from depression at some point in their life than a man is. And there's a whole bunch of societal factors that play into that. Discrimination in the workforce, women are more likely to be victims of domestic abuse, body issues, eating disorders. There's a whole bunch of things that women are more likely to have to deal with than men are. And so going through this assessment and really pinpointing what is somebody's priority and diagnosis and we identify that up front is really critical. And then I'd also say then we have to like develop a care plan that works into somebody's lifestyle. And so our spectrum of care might be simply 5-minute digital exercises and meditation that we recommend depending on a patient's or a member's acuity, up to 60-minute sessions with therapists and psychiatrists. But it has to be flexible. It has to work within the amount of time that somebody has to dedicate. And then again, that care navigator follows up to make sure that they're sticking to the plan we provide. And lastly, totally agree, it is so important to have a really diverse provider network. Like with financial planning and like with family building, mental health is extremely personal, and some people really want to talk to somebody that is like them and that they can relate to. And so we do a provider matching as well.
What I'm hearing from everybody really, it's about the journey. It really is. And all different types of journey, and having someone along the way, every step of it, to kind of work with that employee through whatever it is that they're seeking that specific benefit for. Sonia, what is it to you that helps you to believe that traditional strategies just aren't working?
Yeah, I think, I mean, again, building on what Debbie said, I think there's a couple of things. One, the environment is just different, right? And employers have to step up where, frankly, there have been gaps, right? The school system, even in public health, like employers are being asked to give more to individuals. They have to in order to help facilitate appropriate health, mental health, physical health, and financial health, right? For employees and for families. And so I think it's really important that they really think about their strategies, really instead of a kind of one size fits all basis, on a much more comprehensive basis, taking the time to like really listen and understand where their employee base is and what it is that they need in order to build great policies. And so really thinking about that, often there's DEI programs and there's parenting programs, and they don't think about them on a comprehensive basis, right? So thinking about that on a much more comprehensive basis, combining those together. Also thinking about things like parental leave, right? So really encouraging that to happen, not just for women, but for men as well. And asking people to take that time. You mentioned, Rebecca, just like people not taking the time that they need, not being able to take vacation or do the things that they need to help support, again, from a physical and financial or mental health perspective. And so we really need to encourage all of those things. And I think lastly, we really need to train managers, I think, to be human. One of the things that we do at Maven, in addition to the resources that we offer our members every day, is really helping to work with employers on their manager trainings, right? I mean, it's a lot. I know myself as a leader, right? My team has a variety of issues going on. They have family members that have COVID. They are burnt out. They are working parents. Some of them are not parents, but they still are burnt out, right? And so just being really thoughtful of the needs of the employee population and then trying to build strategies and listening and being, again, human in order to kind of build that trust and respect for your employee population, I think is core in order for us to get through all of this. I think we hope the sunshine is near, but I think, we still have to be resilient as we're working with our employee populations and also helping to support journeys.
To all the great points that you made, I would also add the ancillary kind of in-house opportunities that our employers have. For example, they can have all of those lovely benefits, but if no one knows about it, if they don't work with the vendors internally and externally to let everyone know that these benefits are available to them, then it won't be used and severely underutilized. So Rebecca, we talked about why the traditional system didn't work, but what can you do through LearnLux to help empower women to come back to work, to kind of work to reverse those terrible numbers that we talked about at the top of this discussion?
Yeah, exactly what you were just saying is what I was going to talk about. It's, part of LearnLux, I talked a lot about the CFPs, the Certified Financial Planners, and the digital component. Not everyone's ready to talk to someone. And so the digital experience really lets someone, just get a checkup, understand where they are. And a huge component of that is understanding your benefits. So we work with employers to pull in all their benefit offerings. And it has become quite a utilized area of just helping people understand what's offered to them and actually doing education on their benefits and how that fits into their financial plan. A lot of people were leaving the workforce and don't know if they can return because they're not sure if it actually makes sense for them to be paying for childcare. It might be more cost effective for them to stay home. And so we can help them understand, well, how do pre-tax products like your DCFSA, actually help you with either taking care of your parents, taking care of your kids so that you can come back to work. It's using some of our budgeting and total comp tools to see your total rewards and say, hey, actually, I'm also getting healthcare paid for. I'm also having equity, having all these other rewards offered to me. And if I include that in my total picture, it actually does make sense for me to work. And so it's really understanding what is being offered to them. Just like you said, there are amazing benefits, and usually HR teams are spending a lot of time picking the right benefits.
And money.
At the end of the day, really building a financial plan and utilizing your benefits in that plan help you make the most of what you're being offered and understand if you can take that job.
Absolutely. How about you, Debbie?
Yeah, so first, this really starts with leadership. And so having the right advocates in leadership at the company when we roll out this plan and partnering with us on communication makes all the difference. And man, this is like so timely because I think the entire world heard Meghan Markle's interview. And I step back and I think Meghan was a princess, but was an employee of the palace. And it was completely heart-wrenching to hear that she had thoughts that she didn't want to be alive anymore. And she essentially had to go to her employer who denied her access. And so even the fact that it wasn't an anonymous or like clear path to how to get help was heartbreaking. And I love to get my stomach drops thinking about that this inequity may even like exist in the workplace. So again, I'd say having the right leadership advocates, letting employees know it is okay to ask for help. You don't have to tell your boss about it. There's an anonymous way to reach out and get that help, and it's easy. Is the most important thing, I think. And thinking about why should leadership actually advocate for this? Of course, there are some severe crises like suicidal thoughts, which must be addressed immediately. And then there's a whole spectrum of acuity as well. And at Spring, we've partnered with some of our largest customers, and we were actually able to show that employee churn was half as likely to happen amongst the populations that were utilizing a mental health benefit.
And there are employers out there that they're doing it right. Does anyone have any stories to share about an employer that they know about? We don't have to disclose any names, but they're doing it right, and it deserves to be highlighted.
I'm happy to jump in. I have a couple examples, and it's actually companies that have male leadership, and I think it's really important to get buy-in from leadership. It's been a constant theme that we've talked about. But Dan, the CEO of Chegg, Dan Rosenwag, Chegg's a public company in the education space. He's really passionate about financial wellness, and the aspect that he chose to tackle to start was actually paying off his employees' student debt. And we know that student debt is disproportionately affecting women. And so that was a really amazing step to take. And he's really trying to bring the industry together and Fortune 500 CEOs to, take steps and understand that people might not say they're not financially well, but why would you tell your boss that? Even if you have your retirement account set up, it doesn't mean you have a ton of debt because of healthcare or because of credit card bills. And you would you never want to bring that up unless you feel like you're in a safe space or can do it anonymously. So I think that's a great example.
Love that. Just looking at the time, Carly, do we want to jump into questions from the audience, or do you want us to kind of take one more full question?
Thanks, Averjill. Yeah, I think we can go through another question or two as we continue to get more questions from the audience.
Okay, thank you. So employers want to expand their total reward strategies, but budgets are tight. How can we quantify return on investment when considering the new benefits? Debbie, I'd love to give this one to you first as a CFO, because it's a double-edged sword, but Sonia even highlighted sooner that it's not as fuzzy as it once was a couple of years ago.
Absolutely. And I can say that I am a reformed CFO when thinking about benefits. I'd say there were times earlier in my career when I truly was just looking at the dollars that a benefit was going to cost and actually not thinking about ROI at all. And so I really encourage anybody who is just looking at the dollar cost of a benefit to stop doing that. Really important. And then, at Spring, there's really two easy ways for us to look at this. We can measure productivity, and we can measure the ROI in a sense. We'll look at it in two different ways. One is the time to getting into care. And with a traditional mental health benefit, that might take 21 days, and we will get somebody to care within 1 to 2 days. And if you think about all of like the mental agony and the stress of that person is going through for 3 weeks versus 1 day until they start to enter care, that's a lot of lost productivity. And then we'll also measure it in time to recovery. And so traditionally it might take 8 visits to start to recover. We can do that in 3 to 4, and we measure it with ongoing assessments and check-ins that are completed by the patient and evaluated by our data science team. And lastly, I already gave that measure around churn. Churn, I think, is the most costly detriment of not having the right benefits program. It is not only, you know, if you're paying a recruiter, your team is taking the time, but that lost productivity that the person leaving and the amount of time it takes to train somebody to get up to speed is churn, reduce churn.
Oh, Debbie, I need you to bring some other CFOs along with you.
I was just going to say the same thing. Could we podcast that as part of our sales process?
Correct. Can we get this ad hoc? Because we need more CFOs like you. Sonia, how do you feel about proving, you know, how this impacts costs and it's worth the chance?
Yeah, I mean, I think again, you know, the pieces that Debbie highlighted, right? It's thinking about obviously the costs that you're investing in the program, but then also thinking about the long-term rewards around retention. As I mentioned, you know, return to work rates after first-time pregnancy, right? We see those in the closer to the 85% rate when people are using Maven, because that supports, and you've made those investments in those employees over time, right? And you want them to come back. I think lastly, I think it's also, you know, we believe strongly in the clinical outcomes as well as the, you know, dollars over dollars outcomes. And so, as I mentioned, you know, some of the research that we've seen also demonstrates, you know, overall better revenue numbers and the investments for parents and non-parents benefits. But the clinical piece of being able to actually have better healthcare outcomes is something that's so important. And, you know, another way to measure it, obviously there's like, you know, cost before and cost after, but it's also around activation. I think that's why we believe so strongly in this investment of this time. You know, 30% of women actually don't have PCP. And so their first entry into healthcare is when they're starting a family. It's when they become activated. It's when they're interested. They make 80% of the healthcare decisions for themselves, 60% of healthcare decisions for others. So the investment in time to educate and accelerate and activate an individual at that moment really has amazing downstream implications that we, you know, it's hard to measure, but I know, you know, I was very much activated when I became a mom, and that is something that, you know, we need to help others with, right? And I was very privileged and blessed, and there's others that are not in that scenario. So making those investments significantly now, I think, is another way to really think about that long-term ROI, which benefits society in addition to the actual dollars that are spent on the benefits on a customer by customer basis.
Thank you. I do want to squeeze in a question that we've gotten from another activated mom, actually. She says, as a mom of 3 children, 2 teenagers and 1 in a few years, and the daughter of 2 aging parents, I feel like I am a part of an overlooked group, no longer having babies, but still have kids, family, and parents that require so much time and so much attention. So her question is, I've heard from several women that they're feeling the same. Any suggestions to kind of help her manage and get through the emotional support, and how to start conversations regarding compensation, learning how to invest, just the whole shebang? Whomever wants to jump in.
Well, I'm in that demographic. My daughters are 2 teenagers, and obviously also have parents who are aging and in-laws as well. And so, you know, the advice I would say is the same way that we're talking about, just in taking care of yourself and investing in yourself, is taking the time to be able to think about those resources. And there are a lot that are available. And, you know, both either through employers, but then also available through other ways. And I know, Rebecca, you probably have some really significant thoughts around particularly financial planning on both ends of that spectrum as well.
Absolutely. I was just talking about this with some of our financial planners last week. a lot of people are having this conversation. You're in the sandwich generation, you're taking care of your parents, you're taking care of your kids. And, one of our planners said something that actually inspired me about, you put your own mask on first. And she said, make sure that you are taking care of yourself, and that in all of these different ways, financially, mentally, you are taking care of yourself, because otherwise it is really difficult to be supporting everyone else. And I think sometimes we just forget that in this crazy year. You just forget you're taking care of everyone. And so, if you can just pause and try and do something for you, I know sometimes it seems impossible. I actually get quite a few employers who ask this as well. During COVID, they were saying, we're adding additional time off for parents, but we want to make sure that we're addressing the other 50% of our population, which is not parents, but they might be, people living with 3 roommates, and they're taking their calls from a closet because they literally don't have space to, take their work calls. And so, again, that's where a lot of people this year really ramped up their financial well-being program, because it is something that was ubiquitous to everyone, and they could show that they care about all the work that people are putting in. But I think, like Sonia and Debbie have said, a lot of these benefits impact everyone, no matter what stage of life you're in. You can take the time for yourself in all these different capacities.
I have one more question as we close out our discussion today. Debbie, if you don't mind, I'll kick this one to you first. And it's about how we drive engagement. There's so many benefits, so many solutions, and an employer can decide to have them all, or, what fits them. But at the end of the day, as I mentioned earlier, if no one knows about it, if no one's engaging with it, it's as if it doesn't exist. So what successful engagement strategies have you had?
Yeah, it varies, because employers are all different, and the workforce that they have are all different. And so, being a telehealth, a digital company, it's actually quite easy to engage employers whose workforce is largely on their computer all day long. And we have emails, and we can engage those people. And really finding the strategies that touch different types of populations becomes more difficult. And so that is, getting a poster on the wall in a break room. It's creating on-site events and learnings. It is creating community. I'd actually say one of the benefits of the question that we just had is that we are now in this digital webinar place where, hopefully there's an avenue where you can provide feedback to your employer about topics that are important, and then your benefit solution can create lunch and learns or different types of events specifically around those topics.
And how about you with Maven, Sonia?
Yeah, I think, as Debbie mentioned, everybody is different. And I think that's where we've seen different strategies. So we have some employers that, have really active Slack channels. And so they're constantly, reiterating about the ability to connect with Maven and to, speak with one of our care advocates, or think about your, journey to parenthood. And that's a great way. We are also very integrated with a lot of the ERGs in employers. And so, really tapping into those employee resource groups, the parenting groups, others that we have availability. We will do webinars and other components there that, we've seen to be very successful. But I think ultimately it's really around early and often. And, it's really that moment that matters, is when people are making a choice. And so being able to find them and have them get information in the moment that matters is very important. And that really just requires consistently ongoing communications in a variety of channels for people to absorb that and have that availability for that information when they need it most.
Thank you. I think we've reached our time. And so, perfect timing. I want to thank you on behalf of all the panelists, LearnLux, for really taking time out of your schedule to really learn how there are ways that can be deployed to assist in bridging the gap in women in benefits. Carly, I know that there will be information that will be sent out to all attendees. We ask that you pay attention to those emails, answer those emails. And if you have any questions that you did not want to ask tonight, please ask them anyway via email. They will be gathered and we will receive them. Rebecca, did you have anything else as we close out?
Thank you all so much. It's amazing that you're taking the time out of your day to talk about benefit equity. It's so important in 2021. It's so important always. It always has been. I'm glad this topic has been brought to light. Thank you so much, Averjill.
Thank everyone.
Take
Thank
care.
you.
Thank you.